So the last time we talked, generally the coup had just started. Now we're,
Yeah.
I guess, almost 2 weeks into it. Um, do you have any comments, John, that you want to make? I have a few.
About so far,
Yeah,
the
what's
coup.
happened in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, we are the first one to discuss on the coup in
Hmm.
Burma on the very first day of the coup on the
Yes.
February 1. That time, nobody yet talking about it. Even people don't know about the coup on that day. But we already discussed the issue on the very first day. So it made people more digest,
Hmm.
Our discussion made people more digest what should be, what is the clear picture of the coup in Burma, what should we do, what has mistaken by Suji government, and what is mistake by the military, and what the future people can figure out through our discussion. There are a lot of things we did. So now discuss, the the protests are big and bigger compared from the first day. The first day you think very small arrested is the first day, and very beginning it's about only top leaders 20, 30 start arrested. Now 100, I guess maybe 1,000 are already arrested. Yeah, and the protests spread out the whole nation, everywhere, and it's bigger. And uh, military mindset uh, is very maybe they are very conservative mindset. They still seem they are not realized. They undermine the people protest so far. They think people will be uh, just rise
Hmm.
and they fall back later or sooner. That's military mindset. So it is very bad thing, the military mindset. And the protester, I feel sorry for in this kind of coronavirus. That is very bad time to do the protest. That I
Yeah.
feel sorry for the people. Yeah. So these are so far we see ongoing inside Burma, and international society is pretty good. U.S. did a good approach, a good decision, and UN also did. I mean, better than before. Even they cannot concrete decision, but their expression is much better than successor previous decision in many cases. So I hope they are pretty much things are going to change. And also, I'm surprised within the military elite, the former senior Dan Shui, Deng Seng, former general, they are not supporting that this coup, you know. Deng Seng is among the protester, former president and former general. I mean, they support protester, not the coup general. So I'm pretty sure among elite general also different opinion. Only current who are in power, they just make decision, it seems, because the older general seem they don't know about that coup. That is clear. So this coup is pretty much different from previous coup in Burma because the supporters are very limited and the atmosphere are very much different. So let's see. I want things finish, the military system in the Burma. That I wish to finish military system.
Well, I don't think the military system is going to be finished anytime soon. What's happened over the last week and a half in terms of America, just yesterday, the current American government announced that they would be imposing very, very harsh sanctions against Burma.
Yeah.
Very, very harsh. They're freezing their bank accounts, and the details are not completely clear yet, but the report I heard made it seem like it was a very extreme response. So this is perfect for
already, speak out about sanction issue, right? Have you ever read?
What's that?
He already announced the sanction of Burma.
Yeah, Biden did.
Yeah.
Yes, and this will be perfect for China, because then the government has to rely on China for funding. So the sanctions are a very, very bad thing. And I think the Biden administration would be, very different, I think, from what the Trump administration would have been. The Trump administration would have been slower too. So the factions in the American government are Mitch McConnell, the former Speaker of the Senate, or ruling majority leader of the Senate, and he's very closely tied in with the Chinese Communist Party. And he was the primary mover and shaker between the sanctions in the 90s, or which we want to talk about subsequently. So, and why those sanctions did no good for Burma, but did very good for China. So the way I see it now, the Burmese government, why did they have this coup? Two reasons are because of the general's desire to promote his hang on a second.
I mean, it's pretty much different. This time U.S. position is different from previous one, because previous sanction is affect the ordinary people,
Well, these sanctions are going to affect the ordinary people the same. They're saying that they're targeting the military leaders,
but this time,
but the military
better.
I don't think so. It's just public relations on their part.
Because USA, they said they stopped funding to directly military the regime. Instead, they will divert the fund to the ordinary who are in hardship. So that approach is very good.
Yeah, I think it's just public relations. There's the economy of Burma is not that closely tied to the economy of it's already open. No, is not that closely tied to the economy of America. So the sanctions will hit the poor people, and the military. It's not like the military leaders are profiting greatly themselves.
Of course, generally the sanction is always hit the whole country.
Yes.
But the U.S. assistance fund, like USA or those funds, maybe they were willing to pour to the ordinary people and who are in hardship, even though it's already affected by the whole country from sanction. That is a general.
That's like a smart bomb. No, I don't think so. I think there's just going to be as much collateral damage as before. It's just marketing on their part.
I'm not sure. But there's official statement, USA. And
I think it's completely bullshit. I think the Biden administration is in bed with the Chinese Communist Party, and together, the only hope for Myanmar. Well, so the question is, why was there a coup? And one of the reasons is the vanity of the general, and the other reason is the corruption of the NLD.
yeah,
So
yeah.
the NLD was basically bending over for China, and according to what's his name, the general there, they were the coup was staged.
General
Min
Min Aung Hlaing,
Al Hai, yes.
the coup.
The coup was staged there in order to stop China from raping Myanmar with the sanction of the NLD. So the coup might be a good thing. Nobody knows because it depends on the results.
Military statement, they mentioned the coup, the main reasons about election fraud.
Election fraud, yes.
That is not, I mean, nothing to do with China, And
well, it would have something to do with China because it would have to do with the votes of the minority groups there, and whether they were. I think the military was hoping that these groups would be more strongly represented, and the NLD was less represented.
I mean,
what's her face? Aung San Suu Kyi has not had a good track record of increasing the minority groups into the state process.
of course, she is not perfect.
She's not perfect, no, but the NLD was not either. The NLD was not effective.
NLD,
the military was more effective.
NLD is bullshit, Because of NLD bullshit, Aung San Suu Kyi has helped less. If NLD is very strong, Aung San Suu Kyi may not collapse easily because nobody supporting around her. I mean, a good idea, a good advice. Aung San Suu Kyi doesn't have a good a technician, advisor around her. All her party are bullshit. That's why, she is now in trouble. I was surprised from the beginning how she was survived because she did not have a good number of technician or advisor or very expert. They don't want to invite, and they don't want to try to find out who are expert and who are technician to build the country, and they just a kind of they just want to have power.
Right. So in that sense, you're better off with the Tatmadaw running things.
No, I'm not agreeing Tatmadaw. NLD is a bullshit, but it doesn't mean I agree Tatmadaw. The military.
Well, that's the rock in the hard place.
I mean, the democracy in system structure. Democracy is correct. NLD is correct in this structure. They have elected. They compete for election. They win for election. I mean, the structure is nothing wrong with NLD. And Tatmadaw case is totally different. Military. They are derailing the structure, derailing the system. They are far away from the system. They are opposite to the system. That That is the problem of the military. NLD is not that problem. They are correct in the structure, democracy system. But I mean, the implementing the nation building, implementing a good nation building to bring up the country, the government should have sufficient technician, advisor, expert and scholar. They have to have a, master plan. But
they're not going to have one. And in terms of democracy, it's too easy to manipulate elections, so that you would have, in a sense, you would just have the influence of China there. I think that's what the Tatmadaw was saying when they were saying the election was rigged. It didn't really represent the will of the people. It just represented a what can you say?
I mean, they are legal in terms of democracy, but they failed to do next step. The NLDs failed to do next step because democracy election itself is not finished. They think those all NLD and Aung San Suu Kyi surrounding people, they think election is just finished. They win, they will sit on the throne, and they do everything whatever they want. They ignore anything, everything. They don't care. That is their mistake. That's why last our discussion, I'm explaining you, I'm arguing. Aung San Suu Kyi was so unprepared. That is the reason. That is my argument. Why she was so unprepared? Or NLD, her group, they think election is finished. Their goal is just for election. It is not building the nation, That is their mistake. They are so unprepared. So unprepared, pretty good. He may be.
Okay. Do you think he
easily follow the democracy system? I thought that, but why he suddenly changed his behavior? I surprised. So something wrong with it.
Do you think he's personally corrupt?
I mean, all dictator, the chief of army has some connection in economic, business.
Well, they have to be powerful enough to stay in power. But
sharing,
all
this, they have a network. So it's definitely they concerned about those things.
But the point is that he's not personally corrupt in the sense of Mahinda Rajapaksa, who's taking suitcases of money and putting it in London, is taking hundreds of millions of dollars off the Chinese and giving it to his family. So he's not personally corrupt in that way. Of course, he has to manage a lot of corrupt businesses like Putin does.
Power is connected with all this business network and all this hierarchy structure. So I found if he suddenly lost his position, all of his network may be in trouble.
Right.
That
Japan has the same problem.
His decision to be coup recently. That is his personally related issue. The other thing is his associate military general. Up to general level, I think they are still believe they can follow their previous boss, their previous dictatorship style.
And they really see themselves as the guardians of the country's destiny. They are the wise men, or they are the oligarchs, as it were. They are the senators.
that is the problem of Burmese military. They have psychological big problem, you know. That's what I call
Well,
virus. That is virus.
well, this
From the
stress,
beginning,
this stems partly from General Aung San himself and the structure of the military when it was started, when the Tatmadaw was started. And I think it also stems from the nature of a Buddhist kingship state, where you do have a natural hierarchy. But even in the Buddhist kingship state, the person who runs the government runs the government. The Buddhist clergy doesn't run the government. I don't know.
Yeah.
So when I was in Pagan, all the businessmen there were busy rebuilding these old ruined Buddhist temples. So they took their profits from the business and they were making this old temple ruin. They were building it up again for no purpose. But you would say that as a materialist, for no purpose. But in their mind, they were building up these temples as a way of getting dana, merit. You know, they were going to have a better rebirth because they put all their money into building up this temple. And their children were going to have better marriages and get into better colleges because they were putting all their money into building up these temples.
Yeah. So the thing is, you said already only one game, but that game was already fed up by Ne Win dictator, fed up by Dan Shui.
Well, I think Ne Win was a bit of a, maybe there are lessons that have been learned. Ne Win was a bit of an atheist, right? He thought of himself as a materialist.
He is atheist and womanizer, and he is a power hunger, and he is very totally
he got his comeuppance from the Sangha. The Buddhist clergy showed him or his successors that you cannot run Burma without being a good moral person in the sense of following the dictates of Buddhism. Now, there are plenty of corrupt Buddhist monks who have mistresses and everything else too. But the idea of a materialist state, which is in a sense Maoist, didn't work. That's what you're saying. Ne Win didn't work.
He did not really make any materials thing. He also
by materialist meaning he was an atheist. That's what I mean by a materialist.
Of course, I mean atheists usually they develop material things, you know.
I don't know. Atheists are hard to pigeonhole.
So
what you're saying is he didn't do a good job of developing the country. He just did a good job of enriching himself. Yeah.
He did not.
Well, on the other hand, all the countries that have developed into problems. So the fact that Burma was not being developed was maybe a good thing. The environment is less polluted. The countries that have developed, it hasn't been good. Development is not good.
No.
Maybe not development is not good either, but I saw that when I was in Sri Lanka, that the civil war, which wasn't really a civil war, that the Tamil hierarchy conflict there that was billed as a Sinhala Tamil war, was that kept the country from developing, which was a good thing because it meant the beaches were still clean, the timber was still uncut, the McDonald's was still not built, etc., etc. And now that the Chinese have come in to do the development, it's horrible. They're shipping Chinese prisoners over to Sri Lanka to work on construction projects. I was just talking today to a friend of mine in Sri Lanka, and she said the place is overrun with Chinese criminals Chinese prostitutes, what have you. The country is going to hell. So
this is
I
another
don't know.
topic if we talk about Sri Lanka. And
Yeah.
also
Well,
they win issue also so broad. If we talk, it will
yeah,
be another discussion.
I'm not so familiar with the history of Ne Win,
And
but let me write that down to
also,
do some research about it. I also wanted to talk a little bit about Robert Taylor's research into
yeah, he did
Myanmar.
a lot of writing.
Hmm?
And Dan Shui also different topic is so broad. So you just know, you just keep in mind, Ne Win, Dan Shui, all these dictators, they already fed up with the game. They already experienced 20-year, 15-year dictatorship. So they already fed up. They have done everything, all option,
Mm-hmm.
but it not really happened to build a nation. So they know, so they fed up. But this generation, the Min Aung Hlaing group,
Mm-hmm.
they think can repeat again like their senior. That is a big mistake I see, because it is done. It has nothing happened. They already done the game. It is enough, the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the first Thein Sein government, he repeatedly say, we are not going to turning back to the military dictatorship. He is repeated. He is also former general and the first civilian president. He promised many times around the world. Wherever he traveled, he repeatedly said the military dictatorship, we were not turning back. Why this group are doing again? That is so, paradox.
Mm-hmm.
The senior already fed up. Why they are doing again? That's why I'm telling you from the previous discussion. It's virus. The military have deeply rooted virus, psychologically or the structurally and everything. We have to cleanse all these things in the military. We have to do treatment all this virus. Otherwise, it is happening again. They quiet and come out again, come up again, and quiet and come out again like that. So the virus is not just simple disease. This is a kind of cancer,
So
Yeah.
what is your position in Burmese society? What ethnic group do you identify yourself as? Burmese or Wa or Kachin or what?
I am ethnic Chin,
Chin. Okay.
one of 8 ethnic group. So I mean, I'm not going to talk about ethnic issue. Now we are still talking about the whole country issue,
Yeah.
the union issue, how we are building nation. I'm talking about the structure issue. It is too broad to discuss ethnic issue. That should be different topic, not with this coup data. I'm just talking about what's wrong with the structure, what's wrong with the nation building. So
Mm-hmm.
this is our topic
Well, I think
right now.
this
And
NCA, this
issue we
nation,
can discuss.
yeah, this nationwide ceasefire accord is the way to look at the ethnic issue. I think that's the only formula that was arrived at. Not that it's a good formula, but just that it's the only formula for the different ethnic groups who, I think it's fair to characterize them, the way I characterize them anyway, is that they have mutually exclusivist claims on the nation, which means that they have irreconcilable differences with the idea of a nation state. This is different from America you might say, um, where they have different, historically, not currently, but historically, the Southerners and the Northerners, for example, had different claims on the idea of nationhood, and then they had a civil war, and they managed to settle their differences. But prior to the Civil War, I guess at the founding of America, you had your 13 colonies, each with individual identities, but they became committed to a national identity. And this is what you don't have in Myanmar.
Identity, right?
Hmm?
It's federal identity.
A federal identity.
Identity.
That's what I mean by national identity. Yeah, so in Myanmar, you don't have a clear federal identity that everybody agrees upon. You have it in Japan.
I mean, America and Burma different is America and most are migrant, white people migrated from Europe and black from Africa. So you all are majority, maybe 90 or over 90% population are migrant people. You don't have the feeling of indigenous native feeling. So
Yeah.
that is different in America. But Burma is different. We have indigenous native feeling because those Kachin, Chan, Burman, those ethnic Karen, they are indigenous native feeling. They are not just migrated and they settled down. It's not like that. Maybe Rohingya and Chinese Indian case, maybe they are migrated and they can become a citizen like America. But the other, most Burmese, different ethnic group are
they feel themselves to be indigenous. I'm thinking of Japan. The Japanese were essentially migrants, and they made their name by colonizing the indigenous peoples, the Yamato race, whatever that is. And I think they have the characteristics of both. They have the characteristics of feeling native, but also of feeling an immigrant.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've never really thought about that before, so I don't know how far I want to go down that road. But my point was that there's not
indigenous native, right? Korea, Japanese.
Well, there's a myth of homogeneity in Japan. Yeah, how much of that is true? My point, though, with regard to Burma was that they do not share a unified vision of a federated state, a federal state. They have different conflicting visions of what that means. I think you could solve it in a sense by doing what was done in China, by having an autonomous zone. England did this with Scotland recently. They call it devolution. So the Karen state or the Kachin state would basically be their own country. They would be able to raise their own taxes and make their own laws concerning social mores and other things, build their own roads, and then they would have a little bit of national, like the foreign policy would be decided by Yangon. So that's a theoretical model of devolution or autonomous zones. Now, China said they were going to do that for Tibet, and Tibet had a chance to join the United Nations as a separate country. They decided to trust the Chinese instead, and they got completely screwed. They have no autonomy. All their natural resources are taken and used by the Chinese. All their people are put into slavery. All their women are raped by Chinese soldiers. All their monks are lined up against the wall and machine gunned to death. It's as bad as it can
Yeah,
be. So if you had autonomy under
it's
a
also
Burmese
more,
government, huh?
yeah,
If you
it's
had
also
autonomy under
more about
about what?
centralization.
Well,
You know,
I don't
Chinese
think
try to make
Chinese is
more
just
centralization.
colonization and genocide. Yeah, it's centralized. Beijing controls everything. Um,
Yeah.
if you had a central Burmese government or Myanmarese government in Yangon, you could talk about autonomy. But China is not going to stand for that. China is going to bribe the Hua. They're going to bribe the Kachin. They're going to bribe the Karen in order to destabilize the national government and get their way. I think in Burma, you're in a constant state of war with the Chinese.
In
So,
America, you don't have any language problem, English or Spanish, but
well,
it is over influenced by
you
English, right?
have to go back into the history. There was a time in the history when German was going to be the national language of America. It ended up being English, but that wasn't always the case.
So
And currently,
during transition, who German speaker try to speak English in which time and how
this is
they
going back
adapt to English?
a long time ago. This is going back over at least 200 years. So
So
in the history of
German has to
America,
give up their German language, right?
that's a good question. I'm trying to think. Well, when I was living in New York, I was living in a section of Brooklyn called Williamsburg, next to Greenpoint, and I remember that was a heavily Polish neighborhood, and there was a bakery that I went to that had a sign in the window that said, "We speak English." Now, this is America. Why would they have a sign in the window that says, "We speak English"? Because that neighborhood was full of Polish speakers. Everybody spoke Polish. And so that bakery wanted to advertise that they could speak English so that English speaking people could come in. And that's New York. It's kind of a mosaic or yeah. There were different, if you go into a certain neighborhood, everybody is speaking Spanish. You go into another neighborhood, everybody's speaking Polish. Um,
So
but English is
so
the national language very clearly. And these days, that was some years ago. These days in Williamsburg and Greenpoint, everybody is speaking English. You still have some Polish people who don't speak English, but like you said, they're immigrants. They're clearly a kind of minority. But this is very different from the situation in Myanmar, where you have different groups who speak their own languages. They don't speak Burmese as a common language, right?
I mean,
You have the same problem in
even
India, I guess.
even in America, who speaks different language, they able to adapt English.
Right.
They accept English as their
The national
national
language. There's no question.
plan.
Yeah. There's a
I
certain
mean,
amount of question with some of the Spanish, but no, yeah.
even you can do that. You can adapt. It take maybe 100 years or something like that,
Mhm.
and you can live together, white and black, even very different two group. You can live together in America. You can successfully make the federal system in the country and pretty much good autonomous to different
Mhm.
states that federal government cannot interfere many issue based on their local autonomous. Even you can make in America. Burmese is not that different like black and white. We are not that much
Mhm.
different, you know. We are same race. only maybe language differences, and those only those stuff, only language, religion also changeable, you know, language, those are changeable, social factor are changeable. So this is not a problem, changeable, adaptable. But the thing is, I'm I appreciate America is they are the architect of their nation builder. They can create federal structure,
Mhm.
federal system very well, successfully. So people can adjust in that system. Black people, white people,
Mhm.
and different speaker, German, Polish, English, they can successfully adapt into the federal system. And now American is not that problem. It is multicultural state. You can successfully make a nation the world biggest nation. Burma is not that much different compared to America. We are not that big gap, not like black and white. You know, we are
Mhm.
same race and little bit language different. And yeah, historically they are native indigenous, but multicultural state in America they can create that. Why not in Burma? That is not the different factor are not the issue. Now the issue is who is architect to build the federal system, the nation state system. That is the failure is not about different factor.
Who
The
is the
failure is about
architect to
the
build,
system.
build, you know? Well, it's
Now,
clearly not
the
the
military,
LNLD.
they are not the military. They are not really building. They are not really architect to building the system. They
Federal system.
are they are diverting. They
Yeah.
are unmature.
They're trying to
That is
run the
my point.
country.
They have
Yeah,
violence.
they're trying to run the country maybe so that the British don't run it in a sense. They don't have yeah, they're trying to run it to get it to tomorrow, but not till next week.
Yeah,
A temporary
yeah.
solution,
They just
just enough
they just want
so that the
to
British don't have it.
grab.
What about
They just want
the
to grab
what
because
about the
somebody is
what
grabbing.
about the
So
Commonwealth? Is the fact that Myanmar is part of the British Commonwealth still a factor? One of the
no, from
things
the
about
beginning,
the
they they are not in the
they were not
Commonwealth.
part of the
That's also these
British Commonwealth.
extremists, Burman,
Oh,
those
well,
Burman group extremists,
oh,
they don't want to be even in the Commonwealth.
even in the Commonwealth, which is a
They
pretty
refuse.
benign structure. Well, everybody's talking today about ASEAN as being a factor. I don't see it as such. I think it's the only reason they're saying that is because the Chinese control ASEAN. But certainly bilateral relations
So
with
you
Thailand.
got my point, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't like the Tatmadaw. And
Yeah.
my
I
position
mean
is he's they're the only game in town. One of the indices about what the coup is doing now is in Thailand, there has not been a stream of refugees over to Thailand. Um, and so, yeah, the news reports in America are 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 saying, oh, isn't it terrible that they have a coup in Myanmar? It's so horrible, but I don't think so horrible.
yeah, the military is, as we talk about, they are doing something, but they are
Hmm.
not architect. They are not building the nation. That is the problem, you know. I
Yeah.
don't mind military or democratic or whoever, dynasty or Buddhism or anyone. Let them create the system, the federal system, the country. Let them build the nation.
Yeah.
Truly and completely. That important thing in Burma is nobody are building. They just grabbing here and there, you know.
Right.
That is the problem. In
Well, nobody
America,
has an
you
interest
are,
in seeing the Burmese nation built, except maybe the Tatmadaw. Certainly, China doesn't have any interest, and
of course, why China will build another country, you know.
you know,
They they will never build for other.
what about India?
Why? Don't think other country. That is not their business. They won't be interested to build somebody house, you know. Why they will build somebody house?
Self-protection,
There is no
I
question.
guess,
Nobody will
because
build.
of what's
Only,
happened in Sri
only
Lanka. They'll
Burmese
learn their
has to
lesson.
build it.
Yeah. Well, that's what the
You
Tatmadaw
have
is
to
doing.
thank your you have to thank your American forefather. They have properly built the federal system in America
I think
and
it's falling
completely.
apart in America. I give it another 10 to 15 years at most. It's going to collapse.
I mean, you have a good federal system, you know.
Yeah, we did maybe once upon a time, but
You have a good multicultural nation building.
it was going
There is no,
along well for a time, but now it's being reversed. Uh,
but still, I mean, it's not failing, you know. Democracy is not failing. Even Trump supporter are, you know, climbing the the building and the White House, but it's not failing democracy. Still, you are on the system, intact with system. So
well, there's global forces at work now that weren't there before. There were always, I guess,
yeah,
international forces, but there's now global. The idea that there's a one world government or a global,
of course,
which of course is the direction that government is headed towards.
it is
I
influence.
don't know.
It's influence. Yeah. I mean, every country is affected by globalization, you know,
Yeah.
globalization. We have to adapt with the globalization international system. Otherwise, that
Well,
country will be failed. They
it's
will
not the
be
question of the
confronted
globalization. It's
with
the question of
different.
who is running the globalization. That's the question. Uh, the
It
the ol-
is the
the
multipolar
oligarchs,
system.
you know. Uh,
Nowadays is multipolar
I
system, not only
no, I don't
bipolar
believe in a
or
multipolar system. No, that's a fiction. I mean,
no.
there's
It is.
certainly there's pluralistic tensions within the oligarchy, but the idea that like China as a multipolar could balance America's interest, that's not that's not viable. Either America's system is fair and democratic, or it's dead. Um, but that you have competing multipolar interests or Russia. No, I don't see that multipolar thing as a fiction. Certainly,
I mean,
it is
if we
according to China.
have,
China would never be
if,
part of a multipolar world. China is going to
if
run everything or die.
if we are very strong democracy, if our democratization is success in the world, I mean, it can be US-led or Western-led democracy system. It can be hegemony system. But nowadays, democracy system is failing in many
Yes.
countries. Thailand, now
even
Burma and many countries they
Korea.
are failing to move. That is affect the international system, globalization effect. Is a democratization is failing, so the Western-led hegemony is failing. That is the problem. So that is not about a Burma issue. It is
Well,
about
yes, and
democratization in the world. So
I don't see the
Western
Western-led
countries just
system.
know why it is failing. You know,
Uh,
it is
no.
failing mean the Western-led hegemony is failing.
I don't like
So
the
that has to
term.
be keep in
I don't
mind.
like the term Western-led hegemony, only for this reason. It's a kind of a contradiction in terms. According to the Western model, it's basically Wilsonian nation stateism, or you could even say Westphalian nation stateism. You have independent countries like Myanmar, like Thailand, and each of them, have their own sphere of influence. And maybe there's a sort of an international based, system of rules like the United Nations or whatever, but none of that has worked out. I mean, somebody takes control of the United Nations, like China did with the WHO or with the Human Rights Council now. So there is no negotiated truce. It's just one country buying off the other countries. Um, but my point was that the Western-led system was not hegemonic. The Chinese-led system is hegemonic. I think that's an
Of
unfair
course,
attribution.
nowadays multipolar system.
I don't see it as multipolar. No, you
About
could say that you
1992,
have a,
it
a,
is
a case of
US
what do they call
hegemony.
it?
About 1990 US hegemony, but now it's no more US hegemony.
I don't think you had U.S. hegemony. You never did. What you did was have
In
U.S.
1990,
leadership, and then you had maybe bad U.S. leadership, but you never had hegemony. Because if you had hegemony, you would see the situation that you see in Tibet, genocide, everybody lined up. Now you see now in East Turkmenistan, everybody going into forced labor camps, this kind of organ harvesting, and that's a hegemony. But you didn't have that with the Western system. You had more of a Wilsonian nation state, heterogeneity to the extent that you had anything. And then you had a
in
lot of bad
1990,
judgment on the part of
especially
people like this.
economic harm. Russia cannot challenge America. China cannot challenge America in 1990. US was far away, so big economy in 1990.
Well, but they
So
did not
that
use
time
that.
it was
But they did not
hegemony.
use that power hegemonistically. That's a projection that's usually made from the Chinese side, because China wants to be the hegemon. So they complain that America is the hegemon and the policeman. But that's not true. That's just projection. In terms of Russia, that's a very different story. The Soviet Union, well, that was just ending in 1990. But I think the Soviet Union did have a genuinely internationalist vision, which was not, again, hegemonic. But partly we're arguing over words, semantics.
Soviet was never hegemony. It was bipolar during Cold War. US and Soviet was bipolar. That time China was
Yeah, that's the
so
way it was presented. Yeah, I unfortunately so, especially from the United States position. I always thought that the United States and the Soviet Union should cooperate, and they did try to cooperate during Perestroika and Glasnost, and it worked pretty well. And then Kissinger got in the middle of it and fucked it up. and Israel got in the middle of it and fucked it up. But I could see the United States and Russia, now that the Soviet Union is no more, cooperating in the future. That would be the best thing for the world. And in terms of Burma, your connections with Russia are probably your best connections. Russia is your best protector, the least likely to exploit you, the most likely to understand you. I had a good Russian friend who was at Moscow University, a Buddhist studies researcher, probably had some ties to the government, but yeah, made a serious attempt to understand Burma and its culture. Your best friend is probably the Russians.
Cold War period is mainly different about ideology, democracy, and
yeah, the ideology is like a manga, is a comic book to the reality.
Russia fall from this competition because democracy is a success, more success than leftist, communist, and socialism.
I don't see that as a helpful distinction. The Russians were Russians. The Americans were Americans. You can call them communist. You can call them pregnant. You can call them teenagers. You can call them anything you want. But at the end of the day, they're Americans and they're Russians. And whether they're communist or democratic or Buddhist or what have you, like you said about Burma, it's not so important. I don't think that ideology, that's a fiction, that's a novel, that's a good story. But I don't think it's so helpful.
Cold War, Russia, China, all communist socialists, they practically using that ideology.
No, China was always Chinese. It did use communist ideology, but it used it. It wasn't used by it. China was never communist. China was always Chinese.
They still use communist ideology in politics.
Well,
but
they use it in the sense that I use a pencil when I write you a note. But they are not communist by any means, just like I am not a pencil. It's just a tool they use to tell somebody something that they want to hear, or to tell something that they want them to believe. Communism is not the truth, and it is not the guiding. You can't understand China with communism. You can be fooled by it.
Different thing is, they use communism ideology.
Well, they
mainly for
use it in the sense that you use toilet paper.
Politics.
Yeah, but it has nothing to do with their identity.
Economic, they use about market economy. That is
well,
different about China.
they study their own history mostly, and they use that as a guide. And that's kind of difficult to understand, but not impossible, But you have to look in the right place, I guess, if you're gonna even hope to find it. And looking to communism to understand China is the wrong place. You can't understand anything about China from communism.
Early 1940, 50, Burmese leader, they rely on Russian ideology.
Well, Russia is a very different case. The Russians believed in communism. It was
not practical, Socialism system is not.
But go back to Russian fairy tales. Russianism is not practical. So Russia's communism was not practical, but it was Russian. I don't know what to say. The thing was that the Russians believed it. The Chinese never even believed it for a second. And whether it was good or bad for Russia, I guess you could have both opinions, and I think you'd have to have it. It was both good and bad.
The socialism is good, but it's not practical.
Well, practical for who? You know, in this case, I don't think it's an important question to solve. Like which came first, the chicken or the egg? It's not important.
You know, different with market economies. Market economy is whether you like or dislike, you have to be in competition. If you don't do, you lost. If you do, if you are win, you win. Or even you are competition, you can be still lost. So
Right.
that is really is market economy system. So American use that system, whether you like or dislike, everybody has to be in competition. That's happened in the world. That is current system. So Russian is different. It is friendship. They don't have this kind of competition. Everybody should be equal. But who want to be do? American fuck up. British fuck up. They don't want to be equality. So Russia system cannot be applied. So it's become a competition market economy system is more the thing. How do you think about what why is Suji and NLD so unprepared? That's
Well,
we have to
so
think about that.
unprepared for this. Well, she was kissing up to the Chinese and thinking, you know, again that she could get through tomorrow, if not next week, just by, you know, going along with things. And the Tatmadaw thought that she kissed up to the Chinese too much, and so she didn't expect this. I can't see the coup being a bad thing for Burma. It might not be a good thing, but it's not a bad thing. It stopped the temporarily. It stopped the Mitzone Dam from being built. Temporarily, it stopped. Well, I don't think democracy was ever on the table. Remember, it stopped the China-Myanmar economic corridor from building a what can I say? From building that the port there that was going to connect to Kunming. So they stopped that pipeline temporarily from being built. So the only thing that the coup has done is good. The only it whether Aung San Suu Kyi getting out of the picture is not bad. It might not be good, but it's not bad. In a sense, it's good. So I don't think that so far the country was headed off a cliff. It was like a car driving over a cliff. And the coup was, hey, we're not going to drive over the cliff. Now, maybe they smash into the wall or blow up, but at least they don't go off the cliff. You know?
Aung San Suu Kyi exists or non-exist is not that important. But the important thing is the military definitely killing the democracy. That is the reality.
I think Aung San Suu Kyi represents
democracy. It's also problem. It's also affect to the worldwide.
Maybe next time we can talk a little bit more about Aung San's father, or Aung San Suu Kyi's father, General Aung San, because the way I see it,
so
he is the father of the nation.
My point is,
and so the Tatmadaw is saying, we are the heirs of Aung San, General Aung San's legacy. And as long as Aung San Suu Kyi is over there, she can say, wait, no, you're not. I'm his daughter, and I tell you that his legacy is over here, not over there. So that's why they don't like her, because her existence is a threat to their power, and their power is the legacy of her father, as well as their guns and tanks and armaments.
You can make a hypothesis about that.
Yeah.
And definitely definitely the military doing is they are killing democracy. That affect worldwide democracy. That affect the global system. US led, Western led, the system is affecting. So the thing we have to fix is how to restore democracy in Burma, how the role international community should
Well,
play
in
in
my view,
democracy in
well,
Burma.
yeah, okay. All right, so next time. Right?
That we have
We'll
to think about. Yeah.
have to talk about that next
Okay
time.
then. See you.
Okay? All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Have to talk about that next
Okay
time.
then. See you.
Okay?